Go. Okay, so we are now recording. Welcome to our phonics introduction meeting. We hopefully will give you a bit more of an idea about what is happening with your children at school when they're learning phonics and how we teach them the phonics. And yes, and we'll do questions at the end. So hopefully we'll be able to answer any queries that you have, but hold on, write down any questions, pop it in the chat if you want to. We can have a check of that if you don't want to forget. But hopefully we will cover most things through the presentation as we go. So if it lets me do the first slide, it might.
Next slide, please.
Next slide, please. There we go. Okay, so we're basically going to give you an overview of what phonics is, what essential letters and sounds is, how we teach that, getting children ready to read, which is a big part of what's happening right now, how you can support them at home, producing what we call pure sounds, which we'll explain later, and then using the letter formation and spelling sequence to support that writing at home. But that will be when they are then ready for that session.
So the first thing we're going to talk about is what is phonics? Who knows? It basically is teaching the children the awareness of sound and teaching them how to look at letters and be able to associate those letters with the sounds that they make. And English is really hard. It's a really hard language. There's 44 main sounds in the English language, and each sound is represented by something called a grapheme, which is basically the written representation of that sound. So that's what we're teaching them at the minute.
Lovely. So to break that down a little bit, we've got your dictionary of what your children will be coming home and spouting at you. So a phoneme is the single smallest identifiable sound in a word. So the example here is cat, and there are 3 phonemes in cat: a and t. Then you've got a grapheme, and as Emily just said, a grapheme is the written representation. So if you think about a graph is written down, that's how I always have remembered it. It's the written down representation. Then you have a digraph. So we've got 2 letters that are making one sound. So the example here is sh. So the S and the H make one sound together, like in the word shop. Then you've got a trigraph. Like a triangle, 3 letters making one sound, e.g. IGH making the sound I in night. Then you have a split digraph, which is 2 vowel letters, so they're always vowel letters, that split, but are split by 1 or more consonants, which makes it highly difficult for children to recognise where they are in a word. So the example here is A in the word cake, so that they see that the A and the E are split, but they're making the A sound in the word cake. And then you'll probably hear us talk quite a bit about GPCs. So the grapheme phoneme correspondence is basically the relationship between a phoneme and its grapheme. So the name of the letter and then the sound it makes. So the children recognise that there is the representation, an S, but it's a S is the phoneme. Okay, so what is ELS? ELS is our chosen phonics program. There are loads now. So the government changed the requirements and you had to have an accredited scheme. We used to use something called visual phonics, which was based on the original letters and sounds, but with sign support. And we then had to choose something different. So we went with the closest thing to the thing that we were doing before, which is this. And we've been using it for the last 2 years with great success. We've been seeing children become really, really confident readers generally by the end of year 1, if not before. So it works really, really well. I think that's all I need. So it's ELS works very quickly. And I think that was our biggest worry when we first started it, was that it moves incredibly fast, and that's not something that we used to do before. But through the 2 years that we've spent doing it, we have seen the success that it has. Therefore, we now understand that it works. But there are areas that you might think, oh, that's quite tricky for my child, or oh, this seems too soon, and that's fine. Their ethos is keep up, not catch up. That is, in my opinion, not possible for every child. We know the children, you know your children. We make sure that they are making the most progress that they can as an individual. And I think that's the most important thing that we need to remember.
So we teach phonics every day. We tend to do it in the morning while they're fresh. And it's a little program each day that we follow the same kind of,
It's routine,
it's a
isn't it?
routine. So we have little kind of rhymes, and I can never say the word
Mnemonic.
I can't say it. To help the children remember it, and you'll see those on the copy
Exhibit
thing
A.
from home.
So you have the grapheme, the little picture, and then you've got the mnemonic at the side.
And it's quite repetitive because then the children get into the routine of it. They know what's coming up. It's predictable for them, and they're able to take what they already know and then apply it in a fairly familiar way each time.
So, how we teach it, we've got the whole class lessons. We then have activity books. So the children might talk about, we call them the purple books. The first book is purple, therefore they're purple books. They look like this. This one is Mr. Nobody's. This is just where I show the children what to do. And it's just about having a first go at the reading or the writing. So we're not expecting perfect handwriting by any means. They look, if you're interested, they look like this. So they might have a go at writing the letters, or they might have a go at sounding out and writing simple words. That one is pretty tricky. They might find one of the letters that we've introduced that day and then practice writing the hard to read and spell word. They are something that we don't spend long time per child. We're talking maximum 5 minutes per child that might be spending time on this. That might mean that they do a whole activity section on one page. That might mean they do a part of it. That's fine. It's just about them doing the session with us as a whole class and then applying that knowledge in whichever way is appropriate for them. Then we have like repetition throughout the day. So, for instance, when we line up for lunch, we have a magic button on the wall, which has a word on it, a hard to read word. So our current word on the wall I can see is into, and they press the button, say the word, and then therefore they can go through the passcode to get to lunchtime. Little things like that that just help them in a fun way do things, or I might ask them to sit down. So they're hearing it, they're thinking, oh yeah, that means sit, got it. And the example here is get your oat. So we just try and do it we're not firing at them the whole time, but just little ways to drip feed different parts of it. Oh, it's me as well. So this is an example of one of the slides that you might like we use with the children. So this would be the focus of as a digraph, 2 letters, 1 sound, really nice nasal sound for you there. The main thing that is different about this phonics scheme is that you don't ever test the children. You're not asking them, can you think of a word that has You're telling them, you're showing them, you're teaching them ring, wing, sing, and then they repeat it back. And they might come up with other ones, great, but you're not trying to trick them or test them on it. It's giving them, you're constantly give, and then they can learn it. You're not trying to trick them out. And it's something that you can do at home as well. So if you get these cards home and you've got and you could say, runner, rat, robot. Can you think of anything else? But you've already given them 3, so they might give you one back that you've already said. That's great. They've retained that. They're using it again. So it's just about the application rather than trying to get them to think further than that point. Yes. Um, these again are another example of the slide. So the left-hand side is what we do with the whole class. So I get mine to put on their magic glasses or their binoculars, and they look for where the new phoneme that we've introduced is in the word. So they might notice that it's at the beginning or the middle at the end. So they'll go, it's in the middle. And we say, yes, is in the middle. Brilliant. T. And then they blend it, net. Press the button, there's the picture of the net. It just goes through maybe 5 or 6 words doing that same way, and they're looking at where it is in the word and then seeing the picture of the word.
So this is an example of a sentence from year one, so they're definitely not as long. In reception, at the minute, we've got either single words or a caption, so it could be a pin or a cat or something like that. And it's just building up their ability to read small words or small passages. And it's also really helpful to, so like for this one, for example, you could point out the capital letter and it looks different. It's just pointing out those things that maybe look different, but I mean, we haven't taught yet, but if we were to have taught, you could say, well, it looks different, but it's the same sound. We put them at the beginning of the sentence, and it's just, you're not directly teaching it, but you're just drawing awareness to it. So then when they do get to year one or the end of reception, they know what a basic capital letter is. So
there's quite a few things like that with ELS where they sort of sleek them in so they have an awareness of them, but they're not directly taught. So they're not expected to know all of the capital letters, but also they kind of need to know what all the capital letters look like if they are to read a sentence that starts with a word that has that letter. So we have displays in the classroom with the alphabet on the wall. So when we see that, we'll say, oh, this one is here. This is the capital letter. We know that the lowercase looks like this. It's a or whatever. And it's the same with a full stop or an exclamation mark or a question mark. You're slowly sort of drip feeding it. So by the time they hit year one, they have an awareness. So then when it becomes a teaching point, they've already got some background knowledge. So this is the progression of the phases. So if you ever do any reading about phonics, they'll talk about the phases, and the phases progress from phase 1 to phase 6. Phase 1 is stuff that they talk about happening in nursery and preschool, but it remains critically important throughout. If your child doesn't have some of these skills, we still work on them as we're starting the other stuff, because they still need to be able to build that as the foundation. So understanding environmental sounds, instrumental sounds, it's a really interesting thing. We did it at the very beginning of the year, and there's some really nice online games that you can play on things like Phonics Play, and you press a button and it doesn't tell you at all what it is, but you ask the children, what do you think you can hear? And some of their ideas are wild and wildly different to what we probably know is the sound. And it really gives you a good idea of like, oh, wow, okay, that's telling me that maybe they haven't got the best understanding environmental sounds or instrumental sounds, and knowing the difference between a train and a car or different things like that. So it is really, really interesting. And all of the work that we do in our music area and with singing all supports all of this. Then we've got phase 2. So we start the oral blending. So cat, sounding out. There are 23 new graphemes, phoneme correspondences that they need to learn. We've learnt 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 17, 18 today. That is loads. So it's really, really important to remember that I say we've learned them. We haven't learned them. We've introduced them. And some of the children have retained those. Many of the children have not. So please do not panic if your child is not retaining them yet. We are not expecting fully fluent readers by half term. It's all about repetition. And then you've got the 12 hard to read and spell words on top of that. So they're the, is, into, to, go. All of these words, I mean, we've done 10 of those already, of introducing them. So it is a really, really quick pace, but it's just all about keeping going and keeping repeating. Then we'll do phase three, and after phase three, phase four, um, phase five, we wait till year one, unless this year group are astounding, which they could be. Um, we don't think it's appropriate to go on. We think consolidate, 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 make sure that they've got those skills and they're feeling confident with what we've taught them so that they can hit year one by repeating some of that and then moving forward and it being exciting and it being a new place and it being still fun rather than taxing in a very long summer term. So that does say reception summer term two, but we will not, I doubt, start until year one autumn term to do that. And then beyond phase five, children continue to do phonics related activities into year two. Some children still will be working on some of these things well into year two. It depends on your child's own progress and attainment. And we work with them on that. So, supporting reading at home. Some fun facts for you here. So, only 1 in 3 children have read a bedtime story. I went to some training last year and they told me that if a child is never read to, they may have a vocabulary of 4,622 words. If a child is read to 3 to 5 times a week, they would have 169,520 word vocabulary. That is a big deal, a really, really big deal. Now, we read stories probably 2 to 3 times a day in school. If a child is read 5 books a day, they've got over 1 million words in their vocabulary. It's a huge deal. So even if it's just a short story, even if it's just looking at something together, it's a massive, massive impact that you can have by looking at a book together and talking about it and learning new words. So it's a really, 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 really big thing that you can help your child with by reading stories whenever you can, really. And it massively improves their outcomes. I think we've got some more fun facts. I think if a child is, oh yes, it actually says it on this bottom point. So if they view themselves as a good reader when they leave primary school, they are more likely to earn a higher salary when they're in their 40s. It's a it it's although our country suggests that children should be reading really early, which is not necessarily something that we always feel is the best thing, it is important to make them feel like they can do it and they are able, because it really does have huge impacts. And there's big studies. I've put a slide on the end of this PowerPoint, which is an interesting study to have a look at, that supports all of these things as well.
So we've been sending home the phonics books with the sheet inside, and these books are should be fully decodable. So that means where your children are able to sound out the word because they know the sounds that are in the word. And what was I saying? It could be as slow as you can, so it's like slow as they are able to. But we've this week we've had some been just looking at some simple words and just really kind of sounding it out together. And you can see it ticking in their head, tick, 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 and then at, oh, cat. And so just in the phonics books, there's not a lot of words, but it's just that practicing, and we use robot arms, so you could encourage the robot arms at home as well. And it's just getting that practice of decoding, like sounding out the word, and then mending it together, blending it back together. Pippa will talk about the pure sounds a bit later, but the way that we teach it is called a pure sound because you'll talk about it, but it has an it's not
got a schwa,
like b or d. It's got the on the end. So I mean the children will be the experts. It's just treating them as the experts in this because they'll know how we pronounce it.
They're very good at pretending to be us.
Yeah. And we kind of suggest just reading 3 to 4 times a week, and it doesn't have to be sit down, we read the whole entire book because that's just it's not kind of normal,
Achievable.
yeah, to do that. And I always think like little and often rather than short, not as much and longer.
Yeah.
So page or two, fine.
Yeah. And I think it's if when you're doing that, if you're doing the page or two, it's just making sure that when you've done that, reading it, even if you're the person reading it through again, just so they can make sure that they've got that comprehension of the short story, so they'll be able to talk about it again afterwards. Now, pure sounds, as Emily said, it's making sure that when we say the sound, it is k, a, t, rather than k, a, t, which most of us have probably heard and learnt by, and we have still learnt to read, so it is possible. But a cat is really hard to blend, whereas a cat makes cat. When we send this PowerPoint out, the phase 2, phase 3, and phase 5, blue writing at the bottom there, they are links to videos that show the pure sounds. A really fun one is which is the and or your ure is the one I always get observed on my phonics observation every year, and it's really difficult because it can be j as well. So you might have pure with a ure or treasure with a j. So when that one comes up, good luck, because it's not so fun. But yeah, at the very bottom as well, there's a Oxford Owl parent support. If you ever have any queries, please feel free to ask us. But there's also lots of stuff on their website that also helps.
I was just going to say as well, the pure sounds. So in my class and years before, because I've got a different accent to the children, I teach them both. So what did we do the other day? So we did the other day, but I say it as So I said, well, I say it like this, but us, bus, but you will say but us, bus. And they are like digraph and digraph. So it's if you've got an accent as well, it's just kind of highlighting that to them that even though it might sound different, it's the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So these symbols are the way that we teach children to sort of break down words. So we've been talking a lot about decoding. When we have a word, the first thing is to say it. So we might have the word, let's say bus. So I'd say bus, and I get the mind to sort of like say it into their hands, bus. And then they sort of rub it together and they'll stretch it. So that arrow is to stretch it. So I'll say bus, bus. So we've stretched it, and then we use our robot arms to break it down. So we've got b, s, and then we're going to blend it again. Bus. Then we've got to count. We've got to count those sounds that are in the word. So we've got b, s, bus. Now I get mine to pinch them on as well, just to do it one more time. So we do b, s, and then you say it again, bus. And so by the time they've gone through that whole process, they've really sort of picked into that word. So you'll see them doing it once they start to write, and they start to write independently at home. They will have a word and they'll say, I don't know, dog, dog. And you'll see them doing it, and they're just working out how it's going to happen. But before any of the writing starts, this is purely oral at the moment. Before any of the writing starts, something that ELS doesn't appreciate is that not all children's hands are ready for writing. So reading, brilliant. Lots of our brains are ready for reading once they reach school, but the writing, they need the fine motor skills first. If a child is holding a pencil or a pen like this, it's not the best way for us to start trying to form the letters. What we want to do prior to them doing this is do loads of climbing, loads of swinging, loads of Play-Doh, loads of fine motor skill things, lots of stuff where we do there's stuff called dough disco. There's all sorts of things that we can do to increase our hand and arm strength. You've seen the swings that we've got under our tree outside. There's a reason for those. It's to build up all of this strength. Boys' bones and muscles develop at a slower rate. It's actually physiological. So they find it much more difficult. Their the fusion of these bones is slower. So there's lots that needs to go in before confident writing can happen. Where are we at? Right.
Do you have a reading record?
I can go get one.
Um, so with the reading book, you'll have a reading record, and I've had a couple of questions of, or what do we write in it? And you don't need to do it every time that you've read with your child. It could just be once a week, that's fine. But we just really appreciate a quick note just to say, so and so was able to sound out sat, but struggled with or struggled with or something like that. Just because then that when we're reading that on a Thursday, we can think, oh well, maybe they're not ready for the next book, but we can give them a different book instead. So just something really short and simple is really appreciated. And then at the bottom, you'll have seen that, I mean, oh, in there. It's something called tricky words is what other schemes call it, but we call it harder to read and spell words. And we will write in the ones that we've taught them this week. So last week it was put of is, and this week it's into, to, and go. So those are just we'll just create a bank of those at the bottom, and those are the ones that we can't sound out. So if they come across it in a story, the cat sat, they won't be able to sound out the. So it's just a reminder of we can't sound that one out. We just know that is the, and then carry on with the blending and.
Yeah, and I think an important thing is it's fine to help your children when you're reading with them. Again, you're not trying to test them and see if they can or can't do it. You want it to be enjoyable, you want it to be achievable. So if they're faltering, depending on your child's personality, you can either ask them or say that word is and then they can start, and it keeps that flow and the pace as well, rather than them sort of trying to start sounding it out and then getting it wrong and getting disheartened and all of those things. Or something that we do with their phonics books is when we look at a page, we might look for the hard to read words first. Oh, look, there's is. Oh, well, I've got to remember that those are there. And then when they start reading it, they might remember it. On the slide, I've also popped a little tick next to the I. It's really helpful if at home they are either being read them or not yet, to be able to just either highlight them or tick them. So we're getting an idea about how they're doing with those. We do our own assessments as well, but it's just nice for you to see the progress that they're making as well, because they will. And then, yeah, I've also given a little example of just a quick note about, like, Fred sounded out the words, but found blending them tricky. We helped by blending them together. Like, that's just a quick example of how you could write one of the little comments with them. Then we've got Oxford Owl. So I don't know whether anybody's had a go at logging in yet. We try and put a selection of books just so if your child is keen and they want to read something slightly different than the one that we've sent home, there's another selection of books. Some of them are slightly interactive as well, so they might have something where it makes a noise or it says the sound, especially when we introduce new ones. So it's just a different avenue that you have the option of using. We did have to use it last year because we didn't have all of the physical books, but now we do, which is great. But it's completely up to you whether you're using it or not using it. Right. Please, if anybody has any questions, I can see there's one thing in the chat. So let me just see. Oh, it says, will you record? So I've already done that. That's good. Does anybody have any questions? Feel free, if you can, unmute yourselves. Hopefully you can.
Hello.
Hi, I've got a question here. Tom, Artie's dad. Better to keep reading the same book again and again, or if we've got other books that are a similar kind of level, is it good to kind of read different books? That 3 to 4, number a week, is that
the 3 to 4 is for one book. the reason for that is because they build fluency and they build confidence with that book. I know it can seem a little tedious. If they're really, really, really unwilling, do not push it. Like if they are keen on reading but reading different things, I'd rather you did that than push something that is becoming unpleasant for them. But if a child is slightly slower with the book, maybe hasn't got the comprehension once they've got to the end, like 2 to 3 times is perfect. 4 would be ideal. But 2 or 3 times is really, really good, just so they've got that fluidity, and then they've just got that ownership of like, I can read that book, and we might have it in the book corner, and then they can pick it up and read it to somebody else or something. So, yeah, if possible, multiple times is great.
Thank
Hello.
you.
Hi, Chloe.
Hello. Hi. I've got a question about confidence. If they start to lack a little bit of confidence, sorry, is Max in the screen?
I can see that lovely hair.
You can see the lovely hair. If they start to lack a little bit of confidence, do you have any tips on getting it back up?
I think it's the little often stuff. So it might be even just using like these types of things and playing little hiding games, blue tack them to the fridge, hide them around, see if you can go on a hunt around the house, like it back, and build up from there again. Would be
hang on. That's great. Just make it more enjoyable and more sort of fun and interactive.
Yeah, absolutely. And just like we'd always rather go like 2 steps back and like really build that and then move forward afterwards, rather than just ploughing forward. I think that would be my best suggestion. Would you agree? Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you, darling.
Lovely.
Miss Roberts.
Has anybody else got any questions? Super. If you do have any questions and you'd rather speak to us, please feel free to speak to us at the gate or after school or ping us an email. We're more than happy to chat about it because we know it is somewhat an alien land for lots of people. I'm sure I did another slide. There we go. Those are the 2 links that have the first one, top one, the language report is just for me as a phonics teacher, interesting reading about language acquisition and word deficit. And the second one is pure phonics information. So, right, I think that's it. I'm going to stop recording if I can remember how again. Da, 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 da. There we